We've had a couple more voice notes and messages on being child-free by choice. That's a conversation we're going to be having in the final hour of the show. WhatsApp says that I decided in my early 20s not to have children. I've never enjoyed being around kids and I don't feel particularly maternal towards them, even though it's usually expected of me as a woman. I've had an amazing life travelling and just living my life in a way I could never if I'd had children. It's the best decision I've ever made. No regrets. I have 2 dogs and they are my kids. Thank you very much indeed for your candour there. And this idea of, particularly for women, I think, and there's all sorts of reasons for that, but this idea that you are somehow less of a person if you haven't given birth or if you are not a mother. It's problematic. Someone else says, I was raised in a narcissistic environment and I chose to be childless. Have we got I think we'll do a couple of voice notes after our next conversation. We want to move on and give as much time to our next guest as possible. I asked you at the start of the show if you've got a will, and we're going to be talking now about setting up a digital will. So much of our lives exist online these days. I wonder if you've ever thought about what will happen to your digital affairs in the event of your death. Most of us, or many of us, will have a legal will written down on a piece of paper, probably with an executor or somebody which dictates, should I say, what happens to our money, our possessions, property when we die. But in an online era, it's also important, of course, to consider your digital estate. And planning now, say experts, can prevent things like identity theft, preserving documents and records that you want to have saved, and also to stop your family and friends from perhaps receiving painful pop-up reminders on social media. I was saying at the start of the show, a friend of mine who died a number of years ago now, in very unexpectedly. But I still get pop-ups, on the 19th of December when it's her birthday. So what are some of the factors we ought to consider? And how exactly do we go about creating a digital will? Well, I don't know, but Sharon Knowles, who's a cybercrime investigator, does, and she joins us this morning. Sharon, really good to have you with us. Thanks very much indeed. Can we start at the beginning and just talk about, or define for us what a digital legacy is?
Morning to you and your listeners. Well, a digital will or legacy, is where you have digital assets that what happens when you pass on, obviously they need to go somewhere or you want people to inherit. And it's about making sure that everything that you have online is not only securely looked after, but that as in a sort of paper will, that all the right procedures have been put in place and that it is a valid document.
Before we get on to legitimising that document, talk about the type of things that one might want to include in a digital will.
So it could be, a lot of us have these cards with retailers where we collect points that translate into either money or rewards, and that has value. Some of us get rewards from our bank, and then obviously the big one for me is cryptocurrency. So you might have a couple of accounts here and there with a bit of crypto in, and that needs to be looked after.
I'm trying to imagine who might be, when you make up a will, you might make that up with your financial advisor or your lawyer or somebody like that. Can one tie one's digital legacy or digital will, or connect it to their actual will, the will that might be sitting with a lawyer or financial expert or whoever it might be?
You can. There are a couple of challenges with a digital will.
Yeah.
Because with digital platforms, you need a username and password.
Right.
And as I once said, I love my lawyer, but not that much that I'm going to give them my username and password. So the ideal situation would be to split it, give the attorney the username and maybe lock the password in a safe at home. But the secondary challenge there is that if you update that password, you need to make sure that you update the password in the safe.
Sure.
So it does take a bit of consideration. And then I think the most important part is whoever is going to manage these digital assets needs to be tech savvy, because it's no use leaving it to somebody who doesn't know how to switch a computer on or doesn't know how to navigate online. And then there's also the two-factor authentication, which you should have on your accounts, and learning how to use that. So you have to really think about your assets. Who's going to manage your assets when you pass on? And sometimes that's not the attorney, because a lot of them, they're becoming more savvy online, but they're not sort of right up top there. And then if you think about a family member, you also want to choose a family member who's not going to bop you over the head and use all your crypto. So that it is a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, and there has to be a lot of thought around it, because that is, if you don't put it in place, that crypto sits there, it doesn't go anywhere.
Do you predict, Sharon, that we are going to start seeing in the courts a lot of cases being brought by potential heirs, possibly, who are saying, yes, but I'm sure that, Auntie, whoever it was, wanted me to have this, but she didn't know how to change the password, or this, or she did, or she gave me the password and then she had to change it and she forgot to tell me. I mean, it just seems like a litigation nightmare, potentially.
I think it is going to come about because the Wills Act currently has nothing about digital wills. So I think it is on their radar, to relook that act and see what needs to be done. But I think you are going to, because if you have a family member who's very tech savvy, understands how crypto works, and I'm using crypto as an example, because that's where I think most money would lie, and they could say, I've been tasked with managing that, and I think it's going to be a huge tangled web, because there are so many factors that you need to think about, and even if you are tech savvy, sometimes I've got two-factor authentication, I have a password manager. And when I look at my digital world, I think, who am I going to ask to manage this?
Yeah.
Because anything could happen to me. Who do I get to manage this? I can't ask the attorney, because they know that there's a digital world. They've got the username, but who do I leave the password to that can actually navigate that whole online platform and profiles, and then ensure that those funds are disposed of in the way that I actually wanted.
Where do you think people, where can we point people now? If people are sitting there now at work or at home or in the car and thinking, this is not something I thought about, but actually, yes, this would apply to me. I have got X amount of cryptocurrency, or an online presence, or some, intellectual property, or whatever it might be. Because there seems to be a lot that remains unknown. It's not like you could just say, everyone go and get a will. This is where you can go and get this done. What would you advise people's first step, Sharon, in just a couple of sentences, if you're able? What would be people's first step to go and get a bit of advice on this?
To list their digital assets.
Got you.
To have a look at what they have, write it all down. If it's retail cards, some of those cards don't need, username and passwords. But if it's cryptocurrency, make sure that they list the platforms, and then they've got to put a bit of thought about. And then also, as you said earlier, the social media platforms, there's a way that you can, once you've passed on, somebody can manage your profile, and then they put a little word remembered next to your name. The challenge, well, not the challenge, but the person who manages has to have access to the death certificate, because otherwise they don't do it.
Sure, there's a lot to think about. Sharon, thank you very much indeed for highlighting some of the issues that people may have to contend with. So Sharon Knowles is a certified cybercrime investigator.